Suspended the original plan to use the Oxford-AstraZeneca vaccine because trials showed it gives little protection against the highly contagious South African variant of the virus. One option being considered as an alternative is rolling out a new COVID-19 vaccine that's still in the testing phase. Famida Miller is in Johannesburg. She explains why the government is under fire for how it's handled the pandemic.
According to the studies that have been done, and we are expecting that full study to be published sometime today, 2,000 participants were studied with regard to the response to AstraZeneca, and the government has said that it shows that there's only a 22% efficacy rate when trying to prevent mild or moderate COVID-19. Now, this is very damaging for the government, given the criticism it's already faced. And even if the government can be forgiven for only understanding now that the vaccine is not as effective as they had hoped, the government has also come out to say that the vaccines it received, the 1 million doses last week, it's only on arrival that it was established that these vaccines expire in April. Vaccines take about 6 months. They have a 6-month shelf life, and already South Africa has a difficulty in that it didn't have this information on hand. So South Africans are certainly very disappointed, and there really is an issue of confidence with regard to how the government is managing this vaccine rollout. For the time being, we know that they've said that they used the information they had on hand. They've said that this was the most accessible vaccine at the time, and what they'll do now is, one of the experts on the panel that's trying to deal with the vaccine rollout has said it would be irresponsible to completely discard the AstraZeneca vaccine. Instead, they will vaccinate some people at some point, but at the same time continue studies to understand better how to use AstraZeneca.
Well, our correspondent Neve Barker is also following the story from London. Neve, despite what the South African government is saying, they might still find a way to use the AstraZeneca vaccine there.
Yeah, that's the signal that the South African authorities and the experts are saying. Despite the decision to pause the rollout on Sunday, there's been an adjustment in that position, and now it appears that the rollout will continue, but in a very limited way, in a stepped manner, according to one chief scientist from South Africa who was speaking at the World Health Organization earlier on in the day. The plan is to inoculate around 100,000 people, largely to see if it still has a role to play in mitigating serious infection. We know that there was something of a gap in the research which prompted the pause initially. It focused, as we've heard there, on 2,000 people, an average age of around 31. The conclusion being that the vaccine had minimal effect on treating people with moderate to mild infections of the South Africa strain. What we don't know is the impact on the older sector of society, and whether or not it does still have a role to play in reducing hospital numbers and, critically, in also reducing the death toll as well. Saying that, though, AstraZeneca and scientists from Oxford University have been forced to concede that the vaccine hasn't behaved as they wanted to. AstraZeneca said that the response was indeed limited, but there is still some light. The Oxford researchers have implied that they can quite easily, without having to go back to square one, tweak the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine so that it will be effective without having to go through the whole process of a big trial after that. So the groundwork has already been laid. The vaccine still has a role to play in South Africa and still has a role to play as a building block for another potentially successful vaccine to deal with the South African strain.